The Nile flows. It flows without effort, without interruption, without any sense of urgency. The water moves forward slowly, guided by the shape of the land, following a path it has followed for longer than memory can reach. Nothing pushes it forward. Nothing pulls it back. It simply continues. The surface of the river changes gently from moment to moment. Small ripples appear, soften, and disappear again. The movement is constant, but never demanding. It does not ask to be watched. It does not ask to be understood. The air above the water is calm, cool, but not cold. Morning exists here quietly, as if it does not wish to disturb the land. The light is soft and spread out, resting over the river and the fields without sharp edges. The sky is neither dark nor bright. It lingers in between. Along the banks of the Nile, the earth remains still. The soil is dark and heavy, shaped by water that passed over it not long ago. It holds moisture deep within, keeping the memory of the river close. This land has learned to wait. Fields stretch outward from the river, flat and wide, without fences or sharp divisions. They blend into one another naturally, guided by the flow of water rather than strict lines. Paths run quietly along the river's edge. They are not straight by design, but by habit. Countless feet have passed over them, slowly smoothing the ground, shaping it without force. These paths are familiar. They do not change. The houses near the river remain close and quiet. Built from mud brick, they rest low against the land, holding the cool air of the night inside. Shadows linger along their walls. Inside, there is still rest. Breathing is slow. Movement is minimal. The morning does not demand that anyone rise quickly. The Nile has never rushed a day, and neither do the people who live beside it. Palm trees stand along the riverbank, tall and steady. Their trunks are rough and marked by time. Their leaves catch the light gently, shifting only when the breeze moves through them. The breeze is light, barely present. It carries the scent of water and earth together, a familiar smell that does not change with the seasons. This scent has always been part of life here. It signals safety, continuity. The river reflects the sky in broken pieces. Pale colors stretch across the surface, moving slowly as the water moves. The reflection is never still, yet never chaotic. This movement soothes the land. Time here does not feel measured. It feels extended. Moments stretch longer than expected. Silence holds more space. Nothing here needs to happen quickly in order to matter. The Nile has seen countless mornings like this one. It has carried boats filled with grain, empty boats drifting quietly, reflections of clouds and reflections of stars. It has flooded and withdrawn, returned and retreated, always calmly. The land responds without resistance. The light grows slightly stronger, but still remains gentle. It reveals small details along the riverbank, smooth stones near the water's edge, shallow impressions in the soil, faint marks left by yesterday's movement. these marks will fade. They always do. Everything here passes quietly, leaving space for what comes next. The river does not hold on to anything for long. It carries, then releases. The sky warms slowly. Colors deepen just enough to be noticed. The horizon becomes clearer, though still soft. No sharp lines appear. The land remains wrapped in calm. The Nile flows on. The Nile keeps moving. It does not notice the passing minutes. It does not react to the growing light. Its movement remains the same as it was before the sky began to change. The water glides forward, steady and calm, forming slow curves along the river's edge. Where the current meets the bank, it softens, slowing just enough to touch the land before continuing on. Nothing here resists the river. The air above the water feels slightly warmer now, though the coolness of early morning has not fully left. The change is gentle, almost polite, as if the day is asking permission before arriving. Along the river bank, the land accepts the light without response. The soil remains dark and firm, marked by the quiet work of water and time. It carries small patterns shaped by past floods, shallow lines and curves that mirror the movement of the river itself. These patterns do not serve decoration. They serve memory. Fields stretch outward, still untouched by activity. Their surfaces remain smooth and open, ready to receive the day whenever it chooses to begin. Nothing is hurried. Palm trees continue to stand in silence. Their shadows rest long and thin across the ground, barely shifting as the sun rises slowly behind them. Each change in light is gradual enough to go unnoticed unless watched closely. The breeze returns, faint and steady. It moves through the leaves with a soft, repeating sound, not loud enough to interrupt the quiet, but present enough to remind the land that air is always moving, even when it feels still. The scent of the river remains constant. Water, earth, warmth. This scent drifts slowly across the riverbank, settling into the paths, the fields, and the walls of the homes nearby. It is familiar to everyone who lives here. Inside the houses, the morning remains gentle. The cool air lingers, held by thick mud brick walls. Shadows remain deep in the corners of rooms. Sleep loosens slowly, without urgency. No one rises suddenly. The day has never demanded that. The Nile has shaped a different understanding of time, one that values steadiness over speed. Outside, the river reflects more light now. The surface brightens in some places while remaining dark in others, creating a calm contrast that shifts slowly with the current. These reflections stretch and dissolve, forming patterns that never repeat exactly, yet always feel the same. The land finds comfort in this. Small movements appear along the water's edge. Insects hover briefly, then drift away. Their presence is light, temporary, and easily forgotten. Nothing stays long. The paths along the river remain empty. They curve gently, following the natural shape of the land, rather than forcing a straight line. These paths lead from the water to the fields, and from the fields back to the homes. They exist because the river exists. Each path is a quiet agreement between land and water. The light continues to change. It does not arrive all at once. It settles gradually. Colors deepen slowly. The greens of the fields, the browns of the soil, the muted gold of the river's surface. Nothing becomes vivid. Everything remains soft. The sky holds a calm clarity now. Clouds, if present, are faint and distant, stretched thin across the open space above. There is room to breathe here. The riverbank remains peaceful, untouched by sound or movement. Even the birds seem to move quietly, passing through the sky without calling attention to themselves. Silence returns easily. The Nile flows on. Its sound remains low and steady, blending into the background until it feels less like a sound and more like a presence. This presence is constant. It reassures the land that everything is continuing as it should. The people of this place have learned to trust this rhythm. They do not measure the day by clocks or signals. They measure it by light, by warmth, by the river's behavior. Morning is not something to conquer. It is something to enter gently. The soil near the river warms slightly under the growing light. Moisture remains close to the surface, held carefully, waiting to support life when needed. Nothing is wasted. The river provides, then moves on. The land receives, then rests. The balance remains unbroken. The Nile does not change its pace as the day slowly takes shape around it. It remains steady, indifferent to human schedules, yet perfectly aligned with human life. It has always been this way. The land remembers this. The river remembers this. Time stretches quietly forward. The Nile remains steady. Its movement does not change as the morning becomes clearer. The water continues to slide forward, carrying the quiet reflection of the sky, the faint shapes of clouds, and the soft light that now reaches deeper into the river's surface. Nothing interrupts this flow. The river does not react to the day becoming brighter. It does not acknowledge the passing of time. It simply continues, as it always has, guided by the land and gravity alone. The air feels different now. The coolness of the early hours has softened further. Warmth settles gently, spreading across the riverbank without weight or pressure. It is not heat, it is comfort. The land accepts it, quietly. Along the edge of the water, the soil appears slightly lighter in color as the light grows stronger. Small details become easier to see. Tiny stones pressed into the earth, faint impressions left by animals that passed during the night. Subtle changes in texture where water once rested longer. Nothing here feels new. Everything feels known. The fields remain calm, still untouched by movement. They stretch outward patiently, waiting without expectation. Their surface holds the promise of growth, but for now, they remain at rest. Palm trees stand unchanged, their presence steady and familiar. Their shadows shorten gradually, shifting so slowly that the movement feels almost imagined. The breeze drifts through again, carrying the same quiet sound through the leaves. It does not grow stronger. It does not disappear. It simply remains. This consistency is reassuring. The riverbank feels balanced. The paths near the water remain empty, but their presence is clear. They curve gently, following the natural shape of the land rather than forcing a direction. These paths have never needed signs or markers. They know where they lead. They connect the river to the fields to the homes back to the river. Inside the houses, the morning has fully arrived, but softly. The cool air begins to move, slowly replaced by warmth. Shadows retreat gently from corners and walls. Awareness grows, not suddenly, but naturally. Movement begins without sound. A shift of weight, a slow breath, a moment of stillness before rising. The day does not rush anyone forward. Outside, the Nile reflects more detail now. The surface of the water carries brighter highlights, though it remains calm. Light dances gently across the ripples, appearing and fading in quiet repetition. This repetition feels endless. The riverbank remains peaceful. Sounds are minimal, and when they appear, they fade quickly. A distant movement, a soft disturbance in the air, then stillness again. Silence here is not empty. It is full of continuity. The sky now holds a clear, calm light. There's no harsh brightness, no sharp contrast. Everything remains evenly lit, comfortable to the eye and easy to ignore. Time feels slow. Not because nothing happens, but because nothing demands attention. The Nile continues to carry its quiet presence through the landscape. Its sound blends so completely into the background that it becomes less noticeable with each passing moment. It becomes part of the air, part of the land, part of thought itself. The people who live here do not separate their lives from the river. They wake when the light feels right. They move when the air invites movement. They have learned that there is no advantage in resisting this rhythm. The soil near the river now holds warmth close to the surface. Moisture remains beneath, protected, ready to support life when needed. Everything is balanced. Nothing is excessive. The river does not give more than necessary. The land does not ask for more than it needs. The morning settles fully into place. This is not the beginning of activity. It is the completion of waking. The day is now present, but still calm. The Nile flows on, unchanged, unbothered by the passage of hours. It has carried mornings like this one thousands of times before, and it will carry thousands more. Nothing about this moment needs to be remembered. Nothing about it needs to be recorded. It exists simply to be lived. The river moves. The land rests. The day continues. The morning continues its slow unfolding. The Nile remains steady beside the land, its movement unchanged, its presence constant. But now, alongside the river's quiet flow, something else begins to appear. Human life. It does not arrive suddenly. It does not announce itself. It simply begins. A door opens slowly in one of the homes near the river. The sound is soft, almost absorbed by the air before it can travel. Cool air moves gently from inside the house to the outside, mixing with the warmth that is beginning to settle across the land. A figure steps out, pausing for a moment. There is no hurry to move forward. The ground beneath bare feet feels firm and cool, holding on to the last traces of night. The soil is not yet warmed fully, and the sensation is familiar, expected. Breathing remains slow. Awareness arrives gradually, as if the mind itself is still stretching. The Nile flows nearby, offering its steady sound as a quiet guide. The river does not react to this first movement of the day. It continues, indifferent, patient. Another door opens, then another. Each movement is separate, yet connected by the same rhythm. No one looks to see who else has stepped outside. There is no need. Everyone knows the morning will arrive for all, in its own time. Paths near the river begin to feel presence again. Feet move along them softly, following curves shaped by years of the same gentle use. These paths do not demand attention. They guide movement naturally, without decision. The air feels balanced now. The breeze is light, steady, carrying the familiar scent of water and earth. This scent does not change with the day. It does not signal urgency. It signals continuity. Hands move slowly, adjusting simple clothing, touching skin, brushing dust away without thought. Each motion feels unremarkable, yet necessary. The riverbank remains quiet. Voices do not rise. No tools are used yet. The morning does not begin with work. It begins with presence. The Nile continues to flow beside them all, steady and calm, as it always has. As time passes, the morning deepens, not through noise, not through speed, through repetition. Movement becomes more frequent along the riverbank, but it remains spread out, gentle, unforced. People move with familiarity, following routines shaped by generations before them. Water is carried from the river carefully. Containers dip into the Nile slowly, breaking the surface for a moment before lifting again. The water settles inside, heavy and cool. It is carried without spilling, without haste. Each step back from the river follows the same path. The ground remembers these steps. The river provides without ceremony. Tools appear gradually, simple objects worn smooth by years of use. They are lifted and held with ease, their weight known and trusted. Nothing feels new. Nothing feels difficult. The fields begin to receive attention now. Feet move onto the soil gently. Hands touch the earth slowly, testing its warmth, its moisture. The soil responds quietly. The sun has risen higher, but its warmth remains soft, It spreads evenly across the land, inviting movement rather than demanding it. Shadows shorten gradually, shifting so slowly that they seem to remain still. Voices appear occasionally, low and brief. A few words exchanged, more out of habit than necessity. Meaning is understood without explanation. Silence returns easily. The Nile remains present beside every task, its sound blending into the background until it is no longer consciously heard. It becomes part of the air. The paths feel alive now, but not busy. Movement flows along them gently, never colliding, never rushing. Life here does not compete for space. It shares it. The morning continues, steady and calm. By now, the day has clearly begun. Not with excitement, but with stability. The riverbank holds a quiet sense of purpose. People move through their tasks slowly, confidently, guided by routines that require no instruction. The Nile flows beside it all, unchanged. Movement across the land feels balanced. There is no sense of beginning or ending, only continuation. Each action leads naturally to the next. The fields feel awake now. The soil is warmer beneath the hands, still holding moisture beneath the surface. Everything feels ready, but nothing is rushed. The breeze moves through the palm trees again, carrying the same soft sound through their leaves. This sound blends seamlessly into the background, never demanding attention. The sun rests higher in the sky, its light steady and even. The air feels comfortable, easy to breathe. The land absorbs every movement, every sound. Without echo, the river reflects the settled light, carrying it forward endlessly. It does not pause to observe what happens beside it. It does not need to. The morning has found its rhythm completely. This is not the busiest part of the day. This is not the quietest. It is the most balanced. Life along the Nile now moves in harmony with land and water, supported by patience, shaped by repetition. The day continues calmly. The Nile continues to flow with the same unbroken confidence it has always carried, moving forward through the landscape without hesitation or awareness. While the morning that once felt light and fresh slowly dissolves into something heavier, warmer, and far more settled, as the sun climbs higher above the land and allows its presence to remain instead of passing through. The light no longer arrives gently and leaves. It stays, spreading itself evenly across the surface of the river, across the fertile soil of the fields, and across the low, mud brick walls of the homes that rest quietly near the water, creating a sense of permanence that encourages some stillness rather than motion. The air grows fuller as the warmth settles, filling every open space and softening the edges of movement and sound, so that breathing becomes slower without intention, muscles loosen without command, and the body naturally begins to conserve its energy, not because of exhaustion, but because the day itself suggests that nothing needs to be rushed. Along the riverbank, the subtle activity of the earlier hours begins to thin, stretching into longer pauses and quieter intervals as people remain still for extended moments beneath narrow bands of shade, shifting their weight only when necessary, responding instinctively to the warmth rather than attempting to resist it. The Nile remains unchanged beside them all, its surface reflecting long, uninterrupted bands of light that appear smoother and heavier than before, not because the water has slowed, but because the reflections linger longer, forming extended patterns that dissolve gradually and reform again, repeating without variation. Time begins to lose its shape here, as minutes soften and blend together, and moments no longer announce their arrival or departure, allowing the day to settle rather than advance, expanding outward instead of moving forward. The fields no longer invite attention or effort, resting beneath the sun, while holding warmth near the surface and moisture beneath, maintaining a careful balance that requires no intervention, no adjustment, and no urgency. Hands rest, eyes drift, and posture relaxes as palm trees offer narrow lines of shade beneath which figures remain quiet and unmoving, not asleep and not alert, simply present within the long, warm stretch of the day, where silence feels complete rather than empty. The breeze arrives only occasionally now, and when it does, it moves lazily across the land, barely disturbing the air before fading again, its presence brief and almost unnecessary, while the river carries this hour forward with the same patience it carried the coolness of dawn. As the sun holds its position high above the land, its warmth becomes steady and complete, spreading evenly without fluctuation, while shadows shrink and settle close to the ground, offering little movement and even less contrast, allowing the riverbank to enter a deeper and more encompassing stillness. Movement does not vanish entirely, but it becomes rare and deliberate, shaped by the weight of the air rather than by intention, as each action feels measured, optional, and unhurried, taking place only when absolutely necessary. The Nile reflects the sky with softened contrast, as light and shadow blend across the surface of the water into a calm, uninterrupted field of reflection that stretches endlessly forward, mirroring the way time itself feels extended and directionless. Sound fades gradually until it blends so completely into the background that it no longer feels separate from silence, and the river's movement is no longer heard as a sound, but known as a constant presence that requires no attention. The land feels suspended in this hour, neither active nor resting, existing in a state of quiet waiting where nothing pushes forward and nothing pulls away, allowing balance to settle naturally. The fields remain open and still, their soil holding warmth patiently, while moisture remains protected beneath the surface, ensuring that nothing dries too quickly and nothing changes abruptly. As the day holds itself steady, people remain close to shade and shelter, body still, breathing slow, conserving movement and attention, not from fatigue, but from understanding, as this hour returns every day and asks only that nothing be forced. The Nile flows through it all without pause or recognition, carrying the weight of the day as easily as it carried the freshness of the morning, unchanged by the hour it passes through. The day now reaches its deepest calm as the sun remains high and steady above the land, its warmth constant and even, no longer increasing or shifting, simply existing as a stable presence that fills the air without pressing down. The atmosphere feels dense, yet calm, allowing breathing to remain slow and easy, while movement feels optional rather than required, and the riverbank becomes nearly motionless, with empty paths, resting fields, and still figures beneath the shade of palm trees. Even sound seems reluctant to travel in this hour, as if the air itself absorbs it before it can move far, leaving the environment wrapped in a quiet that feels protective rather than empty. The Nile continues to flow beside it all, carrying light and warmth along its surface without reaction, reflecting the sky evenly without sharp highlights or deep shadows, creating a sense of continuity that stretches far beyond the present moment. Time feels suspended here, not stopped, but held gently in place, allowing the land and the people to exist together without effort, without expectation, and without the need for memory or anticipation. Nothing needs to happen in this hour, and nothing needs to be remembered, as the river carries the moment forward without disturbance, guiding the day through its stillest point. The day has not yet turned toward evening, and it has not begun to fade. It has simply slowed to its quiet center, where the Nile flows on, unchanged and unhurried. The Nile continues its endless movement through the land, flowing forward with the same quiet certainty it has always carried, while above it, the sun now reaches a position where it no longer feels like it is rising or moving at all, but simply resting in the sky, holding the entire landscape beneath it in a state of calm suspension. The warmth at this hour does not arrive suddenly, and it does not change quickly. Instead, it settles deeply into the air, filling every open space between the river, the fields, and the low mud brick homes, creating an atmosphere where movement feels unnecessary and effort feels optional. The light becomes uniform. It spreads evenly across the land without sharp contrast, softening edges and reducing distinction so that the river, the soil, and the structures along the bank all appear to belong to the same quiet surface, gently illuminated and equally still. The air feels dense yet calm, allowing breathing to slow naturally, not because of fatigue, but because the body instinctively responds to the steady warmth by conserving energy and attention, easing into a rhythm that matches the day's quiet center. Along the riverbank, movement has nearly disappeared. Where earlier hours carried gentle activity, there are now long stretches of stillness, broken only by the occasional shift of posture or a slow adjustment toward shade, as people remain close to shelter, understanding without thought that this is not a time for work or progress. The Nile reflects the sky in long, uninterrupted bands of light, its surface appearing almost motionless at a glance, though beneath that calm reflection, the water continues its steady journey, carrying warmth, light, and time itself, forward without pause. The fields rest beneath the sun. The soil holds heat near the surface while preserving moisture below, maintaining a delicate balance that requires no intervention, no correction, and no urgency, as if the land itself understands that nothing should be disturbed at this hour. Sound becomes rare. Even when it appears, it fades quickly, absorbed by the warmth and the open space, leaving behind a silence that feels complete rather than empty, protective rather than lonely. The breeze, once frequent, now arrives only occasionally, moving slowly and without strength, barely disturbing the air before disappearing again, its brief presence offering no change to the settled calm. The river does not respond. It flows through this stillness as effortlessly as it flowed through the cool of dawn. At midday, time itself seems to lose its forward momentum, stretching outward instead of advancing, allowing moments to blend together until they no longer feel separate or distinct, but part of a single extended pause, held gently over the land. The sun remains steady above the river, no longer climbing or shifting noticeably, and its warmth stays constant, neither increasing nor fading, creating an environment where change feels unnecessary and motion feels excessive. The Nile carries this hour quietly. Its sound, once noticeable, now blends so completely into the background that it becomes inseparable from silence, existing not as a noise to be heard, but as a presence to be felt, constant and reassuring. Along the riverbank, paths lie empty, their curves resting beneath the sun, untouched and undisturbed, while footprints from earlier hours soften and fade, slowly erased by heat and time. Palm trees stand motionless, their shadows gathered tightly at their bases, offering narrow shelters where figures remain still for long periods, breathing slowly, conserving energy, and allowing the day to pass without resistance. The fields appear suspended in rest. The soil neither dries nor shifts, holding its warmth and moisture together carefully, as if the land itself has chosen to pause, recognizing the balance of this hour and protecting it. Thought drifts easily, attention loosens, awareness expands and softens, no longer fixed on tasks or direction, but resting gently in the present moment, where nothing needs to be done and nothing needs to be anticipated. The river continues forward, unchanged. It does not mark the hour. It does not acknowledge the stillness. It simply carries it along. This is the deepest calm of the day, the moment where movement feels unnecessary, where sound feels intrusive, and where time feels gently held rather than measured, allowing the land, the river, and the people who live beside it to exist together without effort or expectation. The sun remains high and steady, its warmth evenly distributed, creating an atmosphere where the air itself feels settled, dense with quiet, yet easy to breathe. The Nile reflects the sky without variation, its surface smooth and continuous, carrying light and warmth forward with the same patience it has always shown, unaffected by the stillness that surrounds it. Nothing demands attention. Nothing requires response. The land rests not because it is tired, but because it understands this hour intimately, welcoming the pause and allowing it to pass without interference. The people remain still beneath shade, bodies relaxed, breathing slow, minds unoccupied by urgency or direction, existing fully within the quiet center of the day. This hour does not announce itself. It does not ask to be remembered. It simply exists, long and unbroken, held gently by the river as it moves forward through the landscape. The day has not yet begun to turn toward evening. It remains suspended here at its quiet heart, where the Nile flows on, unchanged, steady, and calm. As the long stillness of midday begins to loosen its grip on the land, the change does not arrive suddenly or clearly, but rather seeps into the air almost unnoticed as the sun's position in the sky shifts by the smallest measure, and the quality of the light begins to soften, losing the heavy steadiness it held for so many hours. The Nile continues to flow as it always has, but now its surface responds differently to the light above, reflecting warmer tones that stretch across the water in slow, elongated patterns, as if the river itself senses the gradual release of the day's tension and carries it forward gently. The air begins to move again, not with strength, but with intention. A breeze returns, subtle and careful, drifting along the riverbank and through the palm trees, brushing against skin and fabric, stirring the air just enough to remind the land that the stillness will not last forever. Shadows begin to lengthen almost imperceptibly, stretching away from trees, from walls, from resting figures, creating new shapes across the ground that change slowly enough to escape immediate notice, yet steadily enough to mark the passage of time. The warmth remains, but it no longer presses down. It lifts slightly, allowing breathing to deepen, muscles to release further, and movement to feel possible again, though not yet necessary. Along the riverbank, signs of life return quietly. Bodies shift position, hands move, posture changes. No one rises quickly. The day does not release its hold abruptly. The fields respond as well. The soil, which held heat steadily for hours, begins to release it slowly back into the air, creating a gentle balance that feels comfortable rather than heavy, allowing the land to breathe again after its long pause. The Nile reflects all of this without comment, carrying the softened light and returning breeze along its surface, its movement unchanged, yet newly textured by the approaching evening. As the sun continues its slow descent, the landscape undergoes a subtle transformation that feels less like change and more like remembering, as if the land is returning to a familiar rhythm it has known countless times before. The air grows lighter, not cooler yet, but freer. Breathing feels easier as warmth disperses more evenly, and the breeze moves with slightly more confidence, weaving through the palm leaves and carrying with it the familiar sounds of the river, now more noticeable than they were during the deep quiet of midday. Movement returns to the paths along the river, though it remains unhurried and soft, as people rise from their long rest beneath the shade and begin to move again, guided not by urgency, but by the natural invitation of the evening. Steps are slow, gestures are small, voices, when they appear, are low and measured, never breaking the calm that still lingers over the land. The fields feel receptive once more. Hands touch the soil again, not with force or expectation, but with quiet familiarity, continuing tasks that were paused rather than abandoned, as the land responds gently to renewed attention. Light changes its character. It grows warmer, more angled, resting differently on the riverbank and the fields, creating contrasts that were absent during midday, and allowing details to emerge once again from the uniform brightness that held everything still for so long. The Nile carries these changes forward effortlessly, its surface reflecting the deepening colors of the sky, stretching them into long, fluid shapes that move slowly and continuously toward the horizon. Time begins to feel directional again. The day no longer feels suspended. It moves. As the sun lowers further, the evening establishes itself more clearly, bringing with it a sense of closure that does not end the day abruptly, but guides it gently toward rest, allowing movement and activity to taper naturally rather than stopping all at once. Shadows lengthen significantly now, reaching across the ground and connecting spaces that were separated by light only hours before, while the air cools gradually, easing the warmth from the land and replacing it with a softness that invites calm rather than stillness. The riverbank settles into a steady, peaceful rhythm. Movement continues, but it is slow and deliberate, shaped by the understanding that the day's energy is finite and should be spent carefully, without waste or urgency. The Nile reflects the deepening sky with remarkable clarity, carrying hues of gold and muted orange along its surface, blending them gently into darker tones as the light continues to fade. The sound of the river grows slightly more present again, no longer absorbed entirely by heat and silence, but never loud enough to demand attention, existing instead as a steady backdrop to the quiet life unfolding beside it. The fields begin to rest once more. Tools are set aside. Hands withdraw. Bodies slow. The land accepts this transition without resistance, releasing the day gradually and preparing for the stillness of night that will follow. The evening does not rush the world toward sleep. It guides it. The Nile flows on, unchanged and steady, carrying the final light of the day forward as the sky darkens slowly above it, and the long, calm cycle of the day draws gently toward its close. As the final warmth of the day continues to fade from the land, the transition into night does not arrive with any clear boundary or decisive moment, but instead unfolds gradually, almost imperceptibly, as the light that once filled every space begins to withdraw softly, leaving behind longer shadows and deeper tones that settle gently across the riverbank. The Nile continues its endless movement through the darkening landscape, carrying with it the last reflections of the sun, which now appear stretched thin and fragile on the surface of the water, breaking apart slowly as the current guides them away, replacing brightness with depth rather than sudden darkness. The air cools steadily, not sharply, not suddenly. The warmth stored within the soil releases itself back into the atmosphere at a measured pace, allowing the temperature to shift gently, encouraging the body to relax further, muscles loosening as the day's remaining energy dissolves into the calm of evening. Along the riverbank, movement becomes sparse once more. Figures retreat toward shelter, paths empty, and the land gradually returns to a state of quiet that feels familiar rather than empty, as if night itself is a known companion that arrives each day without need for announcement. The breeze softens again, moving more slowly now, weaving through palm leaves and carrying the faint, steady sound of water that has never stopped flowing, even as the world around it grows darker. The Nile reflects less light now, but its presence feels stronger. Without brightness to distract the eye, the river becomes something sensed rather than seen. Its movement understood through sound, through air, through memory. As the sky deepens into darker shades, the transition into night completes itself, not with silence alone, but with a quiet layering of sounds that emerge gently as the heat releases its hold, allowing the natural rhythm of the evening to establish itself fully. The river's flow becomes more noticeable in the absence of daylight, its steady movement offering a continuous presence that anchors the night, reminding the land that time continues even when visibility fades. Stars begin to appear slowly, not all at once, but gradually, as if the sky reveals them only when the land below has fully settled into rest. Each point of light emerging softly, without emphasis, without demand. The air feels open now, cooler, lighter, and easier to breathe, allowing the body to release the final traces of tension carried through the long hours of the day, as stillness becomes comfortable rather than enforced. The riverbank rests. Paths remain empty. Fields lie quiet. Palm trees stand motionless. The soil cools gradually, holding on to the day's warmth deep beneath the surface, preserving balance as it always has, while the surface grows calm and undisturbed. The Nile carries reflections of the night sky now, dark and subtle, broken only by the movement of the water itself, creating shifting patterns that feel endless and unchanging at the same time. Time slows again, not suspended as it was at midday, but softened, allowing moments to pass gently, without structure or urgency, as night spreads fully across the land. Now fully embraced by darkness, the landscape exists in a state of deep calm, where the boundaries between land, water, and the sky feel less defined, and the world seems to narrow its focus to the quiet continuity of the river itself. The Nile flows through the night without alteration, unaffected by the absence of light, carrying with it the memory of the day and the promise of another dawn yet to come, moving forward with the same patience it has always shown. The sound of water becomes the dominant presence, steady and unbroken, filling the silence without overwhelming it, offering reassurance rather than stimulation, a rhythm that invites rest rather than attention. Breathing slows further. Thought drifts. Awareness softens. The land no longer signals activity or rest. It simply exists. The stars remain fixed above, their light distant and gentle, offering no urgency, no distraction, while the river below reflects darkness rather than light, creating a sense of depth that feels both grounding and expansive. Nothing changes quickly now. Nothing needs to. The night does not ask the world to sleep. It allows it. The Nile carries the hours forward quietly, holding the land in calm suspension as the day fully releases its hold, leaving behind only the steady flow of water, the cool air, and the deep, uninterrupted quiet that defines the final stage of rest. The river continues. The night remains. Time moves on.